An election with 968 million eligible voters presents a severe logistical anomaly. Coordinating a population this size requires managing staggering physical and digital variables. Despite the massive demographic footprint, this nationwide operation ultimately distills down to a single localized action, a mark of indelible ink on a voter's finger. We tend to talk about democracy in romantic, philosophical terms, the will of the people, the voice of the nation. But the reality of counting hundreds of millions of choices requires a deeply unsentimental, rigorous approach. Translating that sheer volume of individual opinions into a functioning government with actionable legislative seats demands a rigid mathematical and legal framework. Without it, the system would immediately collapse into chaos. To understand how this event actually works, we have to look past the political campaigns and deconstruct the underlying architecture of the election itself, the voting mathematics, the statutory laws, and the technological logistics. A mandate of this magnitude is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. It is an intensely engineered system. The foundation of this architecture is the math used to convert raw votes into political representation. In India, this relies on a dual electoral mechanism. For direct elections to the Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha, the system uses first past the post. The mechanics of first past the post dictate that a candidate does not need a strict 50% majority to win. They only need a plurality. Simply getting the highest number of votes, even if it's far less than half the total, secures 100% of a constituency's representation. But for indirect elections, like those for the Rajya Sabha, the system switches to proportional representation, executed through a single transferable vote. Look at this chart showing a theoretical three-way split of voter preferences, 40% for Party A, 35% for B, and 25% for C. Identical distributions of votes will yield entirely different governments depending on which mathematical system counts them. Here is how first past the post treats this data. Total victory is awarded to the party with 40%, effectively nullifying the preferences of the remaining 60% of voters. But when the proportional representation system processes the exact same voter data, the resulting seats in the legislature are distributed to perfectly reflect that fractured vote. This image shows the actual formula used for the counting and transfer of votes under this proportional system. Securing a win requires satisfying this strict quota calculation, not simply polling a plurality. The mathematical method chosen to count the vote dictates exactly how political power is distributed, and that math drives how parties formulate their campaign strategies. Mathematical theory requires legal enforcement. To contain these numbers and prevent electoral fraud, the architecture relies on a series of rigid statutory laws. The baseline is the Representation of the People Act, 1950. This legislation builds the physical structure of the election by allocating seats and legally mandating the preparation of electoral rolls. The following year, the Representation of the People Act, 1951, established the rules governing the process itself. It dictates candidate nominations, controls campaign conduct, and outlines strict parameters for what constitutes a corrupt practice. Specifically, the 1951 Act outlaws actions like utilizing government personnel to assist a campaign, or appealing to voters on the explicit basis of caste, race, community, or religion. Over decades, a new administrative problem arises: demographic drift. As populations move, some constituencies become far more densely populated than others, distorting the equal value of a single vote. To fix this drift, the Constitution mandates a Delimitation Commission. This body actively redetermines the number of seats and physically adjusts the territorial boundaries of constituencies to maintain an equal ratio of seats to population. Without these continuous legal enforcements and territorial boundary adjustments, equal representation would slowly degrade into a mathematical illusion. Executing these laws and processing these numbers falls to a single constitutionally autonomous institution, the Election Commission of India. The Commission's immediate logistical hurdle is maintaining the voter roll. Through a process called Special Intensive Revision, they deploy official enumerators to actively update, verify, and cleanse the database of eligible voters across the country. Managing this immense data load requires the Election Commission to operate a specialized, interconnected technology stack. Take their app, C-Vigil. It crowdsources electoral integrity by allowing citizens to report model code of conduct violations directly to flying squads in real time, utilizing auto-location data for immediate deployment. This sits alongside Aeronet, the massive backend database processing the electronic rolls, and Suvida, a centralized hub for candidates requesting and tracking campaign permissions. But this high-tech digital ecosystem is immediately contrasted by the extreme physical logistics required to reach isolated voters. Election officials physically transport electronic voting machines across incredibly diverse and difficult terrain. To ensure inclusion, the Commission engineers specific infrastructure accessibility options, like the Voting from Home initiative, extending the ballot directly to senior citizens and persons with disabilities. The Election Commission of India acts as an apex logistics and technology organization, managing millions of simultaneous physical and digital variables across a subcontinent. Within this tightly controlled system, political entities have to gain formal recognition. Operating a loud media campaign or holding massive public rallies is legally insufficient for official status. Political parties are categorized into strict legal tiers: recognized national parties, state parties, or registered unrecognized parties. That classification is based entirely on mathematical performance metrics. Look at this diagram. The primary threshold to become a recognized national party requires securing 6% of valid votes across at least 4 states, plus winning a minimum of 4 Lok Sabha seats. There is an alternative pathway. A party can also qualify by winning 2% of the total Lok Sabha seats, provided those candidates are elected from at least 3 different states. Political capital here is measured purely in verified data. Once those hard-won seats are secured, the architecture deploys a legal mechanism to enforce party discipline, the anti-defection law, introduced via the 52nd Constitutional Amendment. This law penalizes elected representatives who voluntarily give up their party membership or vote against the party's instructions. By risking immediate disqualification, the law protects the stability of the mandate that the party mathematically achieved. In the Indian electoral architecture, a political party operates as a mathematical construct, legitimized only by its ability to clear specific statutory thresholds and retain its numbers. When you look back at that baseline number, 968 million eligible voters spread across an immensely diverse geography, the necessity of this strict architecture becomes clear. The mathematical mechanics of first-past-the-post and the single transferable vote serve as the engine, calculating the raw distribution of political power. The statutory laws, specifically the Representation of the People Act and the Delimitation Commission, act as the rigid container, ensuring those unders remain fair and uncorrupted over time. And the Election Commission's vast technological and logistical network executes the physical operation, bridging the gap between the statute book and the individual citizen. Executing a democratic transfer of power at this scale does not happen through historical momentum or political goodwill. The world's largest democratic exercise functions because it is built upon a brilliant, ruthlessly engineered systems architecture.